That's cool, man. I got to get out that way. Well, it's great to meet you. And
Likewise.
I want to begin our conversation with we're coming on the 4 year anniversary of the pandemic. And I'm curious how you got through that time period and how it changed you.
You know, I think the pandemic was a catalyst for a lot of people, for a lot of change, and it certainly was for me. Um, Seeing how, so I was in a leadership position at a large manufacturer, automotive manufacturer, and seeing the impact that that had on all of the people in terms of connections, a lot of the connections started to deteriorate, and that really impacted work, and it really started to impact the general well-being of pretty much everybody, including myself. So it turned into a vehicle for awareness of a lot of other things that we had just kind of brushed, sort of swept under the rug. And I came out the other side, obviously excited to get back to the office, get back to connecting with people. But that awareness really transformed my career trajectory and the things that I felt were more important and the most important things in life. So huge catalyst for change.
For sure. And I think that's the way it was for a lot of people. And I'm curious, I want to get to the exact essence of what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day. And one
Yeah.
of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
We fix the relationship problems inside of businesses. So that's it in a nutshell. And third grader might be a little curious about that, but that's kind of the nutshell dynamic of what we try to do.
I think they could probably understand that, especially in this post-COVID world. There's just things that need to be addressed. So I'm curious, what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream to grow up and become?
I think at that time I was telling myself I was going to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was on the list in third grade. That stayed there for quite a while, but that eventually changed. I think there was a class or two in college that may have changed that perspective, but yeah, I eventually moved on from that for sure.
So let me ask, how did we get to this point? How did you get to a point
Yeah.
where you're helping people? Take me back to where you were born and raised, and what were these seeds that eventually grew into who you are today?
Okay, so um, I grew up in Northern California, and I grew up in a small farming community, and I had in a very sort of traditional, conservative, at least in terms of risk aversion family. That was, my dad was an engineer, and so we kind of followed that dynamic of being able to do a lot of things ourselves, but taking a very kind of secure path, and that led me into the same degree pattern. I trained engineer. I took engineering in college, and then tacked on some business where my eyes kind of opened up to the world outside of engineering and the ambiguity of business, and that was an exciting thing for me. And then landed in the automotive industry, not necessarily by design. In other words, I wasn't shooting for the automotive industry, but it fit with a lot of the things that I was good at. It fit with a lot of the things that I wanted to do, and I like to put kind of pieces together. I like to take the disparate parts and get them to work together, and that's what I was doing. So I jumped in feet first to the auto industry and climbed the ladder there. Ended up spending some time overseas, and recognizing the impact that a career trajectory starts to have on you as an individual, as a family. And then as I came back and started to continue the climb, got to a place where I was burned out. I'd had enough. I could see the impact on my family, but I started to notice that there were a lot of things inside of the corporate world that weren't being addressed. The tools didn't exist. The language didn't exist. We all kind of felt it, and COVID really sort of magnified this, put a big light on this stuff. That if you actually go and address those things, you solve a lot of problems inside of companies, and you make companies much more successful and people's lives so much better. And so when I left, recognized an opportunity to, with my wife, who's a marriage and family therapist, take those principles of sound relationships and the human elements underneath the systems that operate inside of businesses and go and address those. So that's kind of real quick how I ended up here.
Yeah. So who's been kind of a hero or an inspiration in your path in your life?
Um, it's hard to pick just one. But I think that anybody who's an entrepreneur, and I've met several entrepreneurs, and I was never really considered myself to be one, but as I've transitioned into an entrepreneurship role, anybody who has the guts to go out on their own and try stuff is a total hero for me. Who's willing to every day, go face what's in front of them. There's that famous quote about the man in the arena, that's there making it happen, day in day out. Doesn't matter what the critics say. That and so any entrepreneur that's out there making it happen is a hero for me.
So speaking of quotes, you have to give good advice to people. What's the best advice that you've ever gotten?
Um, you have to know yourself, capital S, not just like, yeah, I know what I like, but you have to know and be really grounded in yourself if you want to go out and fight the battles day to day. So that advice for me to really start to understand and know and have a firm foundation of who I am is absolutely critical. That's the best advice I've ever had is just go and make sure that you can understand and know yourself so that when all this stuff comes to try to knock you down, you know who you are, you can get back up and you can continue the direction that you need to go. Without that, then, we get blown about by all sorts of craziness. And when someone attacks you, then it tears you down. But if you know who you are and you know your capital S self, that's the foundation for getting yourself back up and keep going.
So, of all of the business models that exist out there, the annals of success stories in the American storybook, what is one of your favorite ones?
I'm a big fan of turnarounds. So I've read a lot about it. I studied a lot of turnarounds. I was a part of a company, actually Nissan. It was the automotive company that I worked for that was in the middle of a turnaround. And what they did in the early 2000s for me is one of the most successful business stories, business model stories of modern history. And the turnaround that was basically almost bankrupt to being very, very successful in just a short amount of time. So that stands as one of the big ones for me. Um, and then I have to admit, I'm a fan of the disruption that's happened with the automotive industry, and particularly with Tesla. You can have your opinions about the founder of Tesla, but just the push that he has made to completely upend the consumer mindset, the thinking around a traditional automobile is that kind of power is fascinating for me.
So, what's your motivation every day? What gets you out of bed? What gets you to help people and evolve as a professional yourself?
Change. When I can see somebody start at point A who's struggling, not thriving, frustrated, or has a particular paradigm mindset that is not helpful, go from that point to point B, where they have had a complete paradigm shift and are being successful at challenging and going forward. That's the way. That's the stuff that gets me up every day. I get really passionate when I see people making that progress of change on a regular basis. That's it for me on a day-to-day basis.
So, of all of the success stories that you've had, what's one of your favorite ones?
Um, they're individual. So change, particularly corporate change, happens at the individual level. So one of my favorite ones, it's actually just I could pick any number of clients that we've worked with, but one particular client came to us and was struggling to have the emotional reserves to do the work that needed to be done. And we were able to walk through with this person and identify the things that they're doing in their personal life that was impacting their professional life and create a more holistic picture for them. And then to see that person walk through and in the end become an incredibly powerful leader for the team. That to me is probably my favorite success story because it's the individual that had an individual impact on people. So that for me is the key for that's the win, right? That's the win
Yeah.
for me.
So, of everything that you've done professionally, what are you the proudest of?
Um, I'm proudest of this change that I've recently made. It takes a tremendous, I was at an executive level I had achieved success that I had sort of, if you were to write down your goals at the beginning of your career, this was, this is the goal. And I'd achieved that and recognized that that wasn't really what I needed. And it takes a lot of courage to make a change when there's a lot of momentum. And anytime you can make change in the face of a tremendous amount of adversity and momentum, to me, that's a big win. Even if it's on something small, right? If you do so at a small scale, but to do it on a career level, I think takes a lot of courage, and to do things like that is courageous. So for me, honestly, that's what I'm most proud about. I've been able to do things that I've never thought, and I've made changes personally that I never thought I'd be able to do. So that's what I'm most proud of.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, but you run the show. What is your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
um, I'm a person that cares deeply about people, about how people feel, about how they interact, and that's how I show up. That's how I try to show up on a day-to-day basis. I want people to feel like they are seen, heard, and cared about. And I think that's how people perceive me. I'd like to think that's how people perceive me, but that's who I am at my core, and that's how I try to show up on a day-to-day basis. I'm a I like to chase a lot of things. I'm very, very fascinated by a lot of different things. I have a lot of different hobbies, but that keeps life very, very interesting. But again, at the core, it's really about the people that we work with, that we're connected to at just the most basic level.
So if anyone out there wants to reach out, wants to hire you, anything about your world, what's the good business?
So Healing is Golden, healingisgolden.com. That's the best way to get a hold of us. The company name actually is called Kintsugi Institute. That's the institute that my wife and I have founded. It comes from the Japanese art of mending broken pottery with gold and creating a more beautiful piece of art, a more beautiful work for having been broken than it was before. Beautiful metaphor for the work that we do, beautiful metaphor for us. We don't see people as broken. They just have stories. And but the arm of that to find us online is healingisgolden.com, and people can find us there. We do individual work with people, but we take the principles of sound business, the business acumen, and we take the relationship principles established through systemic therapy, through systemic thinking around individuals, bring that into businesses to solve the problems that are really the human issues underlying all of the other business problems people face. So healingisgolden.com, that's where you'll find us.
What a great
Yeah.
story, Jared. Thank you so much for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Take care.
Bye-bye.